I came prepared. I came prepared. I'm a Shaw Stanny. I'm a Shaw girly. I have my sheep on. Anyway, I had to show you that I'm real like that. The Walten Files. Truly one of the most analog horror to ever analog horror. I, like many of perhaps us watching this video, I first became aware of the Walten Files because one Nexpo made a video going through the first 3. You know, there was a moment where my husband and I almost turned the video off when we realized, oh, it's Five Nights at Freddy's. But someone convinced me to keep watching, and by God, I'm so glad that I did. And since that Nexpo video, I've watched the series at least 2 to 3 times, and it really is one of the best ones out there. While many critics may just call it a FNAF wannabe, like so many other analog horror and digital horror creations, I think that it surpasses the source material, if we're gonna go as far as to say it is inspired by FNAF, which I think it is. That's safe to say. It exceeds it. I think it is a improvement upon the mascot horror, Chuck E. Cheese, showbiz pizza horror. What is the Walten Files? I would hope if you clicked on this video you kinda know, because boy are we gonna spoil the heck out of it. But if you are not aware, the Walten Files is an analog horror series created by Martin Paredes. Excuse me, Mr. Martin, if I have pronounced your name incorrectly. And it follows a defunct family burger joint called Bond's Burgers and the happenings around said burger place. There is a tragedy that results in multiple people going missing and some ooky spooky kooky animatronics that do get a little quirky.
The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night.
So it is. It's very FNAF-esque, but there's a lot going on that separates the Walten Files from Five Nights at Freddy's, namely the art style alone. Martin's art style is incredibly unique, and really for a long time was the thing that made me love the series as much as I did. The take on the story, it's a unique story. It's different from FNAF. Really the only thing similar is just, you know, the animatronics in the family restaurant being haunted. The thing about the Walten Files, and why I'm talking about it today, is after a 2-year hiatus, it's back. Walten Files 4, I think, without a doubt, was the most anticipated analog horror video ever. I've been seeing people talk about this for such a long time. It did, you know, this is a genre where people are often semi-regular in uploading, so I think there was a lot of stress put on Martin when he took a little bit longer with this, but I mean, spoiler alert, it was so worth it. He can take as long as he wants, in my humble opinion, because the quality of work is just insane. So I think people were nervous. We waited all this time. What if it sucks? There already were people who, despite this being one of the most beloved analog horror series, there are people that don't like it. So I think I can't imagine the stress that was on Martin's shoulders. Hi, Eileen. During this process. Are you kissing Mr. Manticore? Oh, that's cute. Finally, it comes out, and oh boy. Oh yippee. It's really good. And to sit here in front of you and do the very thing, whoa, Eileen is knocking off my microphone. To do the very thing that Mr. Nexpo did all those years ago, that got me into the Walten Files, to be sitting here and needlessly, unnecessarily explaining to you the plot of the Walten Files 4, and then giving you my bullshit analysis, it's an honor, frankly. I didn't think I would ever be in this position. I say like it's been bestowed upon me. I am choosing to film this record it and edit it, and you may or may not watch it. This could be a flop arena. Doesn't matter. I just like this so much I wanted to talk about it. Hello, my name is glitchwitch.jpg, but you can just call me glitchwitch. I make videos about internet horror. That can mean analog and digital horror, that can mean creepypastas. I have also dabbled in survival horror, made a Silent Hill 2 remake defense video last video. Scary. I didn't like leaving my lovely niche in, just more general internet horror. I'm happy to be back talking about analog horror, my beloved, my favorite thing to talk about probably. It's not what I've talked about the most, because I do think it's a very saturated market here on old YouTube, and a billion creators who are more popular than me are going to talk about Walten Files 4, but I just loved it so much that I had to make a video on it. And, I hope to do that going forward with any of the other videos that are coming out. So, again, I kind of talked about it at the beginning, but this coming out was huge. There was a long wait. Just to put it into perspective how long we waited for this, the last major Walten Files episode, Walten Files 3, came out 3 months before the first Mandela catalog video, Overthrown, came out. So all of the Mandela catalog has come out since the Walten Files last episode came out. Which, again, totally normal timeline for, movie, TV. But YouTube creators, for some reason, have this intense pressure on them to just, churn stuff out quickly, and I don't think that that's fair, and I would hope that this kind of ends that, because it was clearly so worth the wait. And I think the Walten Files is a very important series for analog horror on the whole. I think it really defined what I consider the second wave of analog horror, like your Gemini, Home Entertainment, and your Local 58 type stuff was wave 1, and then I would say Walten Files started wave 2, with things like Mandela Catalog, Monument Mythos, stuff like that. So truly Martin is a trailblazer within this community, and to see the level, again, this is full spoiler, I'm gonna literally walk through every step of the plot and then kind of give you just how I feel, and then maybe some theories I have, because there's a lot of vagueness to this, as there always is in good old analog horror. But just without even getting into the plot yet, I just have to say, this blew me away. I had high expectations because I have always loved the Walten Files, but this has pushed what analog horror can be to an entirely different place. My jaw was literally dropped the entire time watching this, because it's a new level of art that I don't think I have seen within analog horror. It was so worth the wait. It's not even real. I've never seen the community so, in unison on something before. After it aired, I was on Twitter, and just my entire timeline was just freaking out about how happy they were with this episode. And I've also never seen something just I don't want to say tie up loose ends, because I think it created just as many loose ends as it's tied up, but just expound upon a story in such an effective way. Because I think that's a criticism for analog horror on the whole, is how often, things don't make sense, or things don't connect, or things get forgotten, and I think it's very evident that Martin is not letting that happen with the Walten Files. He's clearing up loose ends while making other ones, and just exploring the story in a different way, and that means revisiting things we've already seen, just in a different manner, and I think that's really important storytelling, and I think it's going to make the entire experience richer. It makes going back and rewatching it richer. So, again, I can't sing enough praises for this. I just want you to know, going into my my recap and my analysis, that I absolutely loved this. I think it's probably the greatest analog horror video ever made. Like, definitively. I know, I'll go on and on. Y'all know I'm the Mandela Catalog girly. I still love the Mandela Catalog. I'm never going to stop loving it the most, or whatever. But this is peak analog horror creation. Like, it transcends the genre, and it shows how solid and incredible that the genre can be. Okay, enough waxing poetically, except not really, because I'm going to do that the whole damn time. I'm going to get into what exactly happened in the Walten Files for Cyberfun Tech, and, you know, I'm just going to do a recap, not super long, just to explain what it is. 100%, please go watch it. Don't watch this if you haven't watched it, because whatever I say and whatever smaller clips I show, it's not going to be as rich of an experience as sitting down and watching it. It's not very long. It's like 36 minutes. Like, it's so worth it. So it's linked below. Please go watch it. It's so good. But I am going to just give a recap. I know, like, me personally, sometimes I miss things when I watch these, so I do like watching recaps and analysis just because I'll get different perspectives, or, like, people will catch things that I didn't catch. So, I mean, there's probably things that I missed. Please comment them below, like significance and things like that. So that's just why I wanted to do it. I think it's fun also just to hear other people talk about things you love. I've watched, like, every damn Mandela Catalog analysis video I can find because I just like to hear about it because it's something I love. Even if I know everything they're talking about, I just like hearing someone talk about it. So I'm also trying to fill that void for you. Let's get on. What the hell happened in Cyberfun Tech? We start off in the school that we see in the Walten Files 3. In the Walten Files 3, we see this school via the Bunny Farm game that Sophie is playing. And now in the Walten Files 4, we are seeing it actually happening as it's happening real time. Ed and Molly Walten, Jack Walten's youngest twins, are walking through their school looking for their Uncle Felix to pick them up. And just as a refresher, Jack Walten and Felix Kranken are the owners of Bond's Burgers. Ed and Molly and Sophie are the three children of Jack Walten and Rosemary Walten. Rosemary Walten we'll talk about a little bit about later. She is another major character, and she is Jack's wife. If you recall, again, this is full spoilers, in the Walten Files 3, we find out that Ed and Molly are killed in a drunk driving accident at the hands of Felix.
Go to sleep. Fire conditioner.
It's alright. We get that today wasn't the best for you. We understand. Everything is gonna be okay.
Thanks, Molly.
This part of 4 is alluding to their final moments. They walk up and they find Felix in the adults-only section of this school dance. So, love that this elementary school is boozing up the parents, the chaperones of this school dance. It is the 70s, though. Things are different. Ed and Molly walk to see Felix. This fades into this kind of liminal looking field, which will be a very important location later, so keep that in mind. So after this, we are thrust into a Cyberfun Tech demo tape that shows various like promotional materials and tests for Bunny Smiles and Bond's Burgers. And this is where it kind of flips back to what I would consider traditional Walten Files setup. Showing Ed and Molly in real time was a little different. Typically, the way that the Walten Files has worked in the past is we're viewing an old cartoon or an old promotional tape or the gameplay footage of the bunny farm. So this feels a little bit more in sync with the previous presentations, but as we'll see, Martin kind of plays with formatting a little bit more in this one, which I think is interesting. We watched this cyber fun tech tape, and we're introduced to, well, more like reintroduced to some characters, including Charles, who works on the technical side with Susan Wooding, who is very integral to this episode. We see Charles being onboarded onto the team, and then there's a promotion of all of the showstoppers, which are the animatronics that are the stars of Bon's Burgers. Bon, Banny, Shaw, and Buzu, who all end up being possessed by major characters within the Bon's Burgers family, except for maybe one, but we'll get into that in a second. There is a character that we will meet later in the episode, this kind of white, mangled-faced looking man that will be very important later on, that keeps flashing on screen, and this was something that I missed on a first watch, but on a second watch, it was like, oh duh, there he is, because we would know who he is later, so just remember him. He's important. And very upsetting to look at. Mary Walton is confirmed to be the concept artist for the showstoppers, and it goes in a little bit on her process for designing all of them, and it paints a bigger picture of, you know, how close-knit this group of friends was working on this project. You know, that Jack's own wife is, you know, so intimately involved in the creation of these characters, and at this point, when they're referring to Rosemary being Jack's wife, his name is omitted, something that happens very frequently in these promotional videos within the Walten Files. There's no definitive reason for that. He is considered missing still. Nobody really knows what happened to him. There was a running theory about what happened to him that I think has been fully debunked with this episode, but we'll get into that later. Susan Wooding then walks us through the specific technology of the animatronics that makes them so lifelike. And this includes facial recognition and audio recording. And this is within the CyberFun console. That's Purple Gay! That's what they call essentially the brain of the animatronics. So we see her testing the different parts of the animatronics, and then we cut to Susan and Charles filming tests using the Banny and Shaw animatronics. And I really like this sequence because it feels visually similar to, you know, older episodes, maybe like the Walten Files 2, but I don't know, it's just like souped up a little bit. It's a little cooler, and I love the dialogue here. The interaction between Susan and Charles feels so real, and it's like a really smart way to kind of lore dump without it feeling heavy-handed.
I know. I'm just a little worried. Did Linda call?
She did, yeah. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. Knowing Felix, he's probably drinking somewhere in town.
Does Jack or Rose know?
Nope. I don't think Linda told him about it either.
Susan, we have to tell them. I think even Chris knows about the addiction.
Let's just focus on work for now, shall we?
Right. So, I'm checking my notes right now. What's up to this?
Well, Norman said we should start testing the facial tracking feature, so we're gonna have the robot walk around and see if it recognizes our faces.
Oh, we checked that already. Jack brought in Molly here, and the console recognized them.
Well, yeah, but we're going to do a secondary test because the console seems to have trouble detecting the faces.
Oh, the test we did with Sophie. Right.
They make conversation about Felix's alcohol addiction and his wife Linda's just refusal to acknowledge the situation, and then the fact that apparently Jack and Rose are unaware of the situation, which is kind of hard to believe, but, you know, they could be in denial, or he could be a really functioning alcoholic and many people around him may just not know. But obviously Susan and Charles are aware enough of the situation, and it's starting to leak into work and being a problem. After this, there's a small time jump where Susan and Charles are testing all the animatronics, and they discuss Felix and the accident with the kids. Susan is explaining to Charles what exactly happened, because everyone outside of the direct Walten family and Felix has kind of been left in the dark. They had a private, quiet funeral where they weren't even invited. It was just the family. Susan alludes that Felix is lying about it being an accident and saying that something worse may have happened. And I misunderstood that at first, thinking kind of the worst, that like he had been doing something very inappropriate with the children. Then I found out in the unlisted video, Lacrimosa, which I'll talk about later. Yes, there's an unlisted video. Felix just lied to the police and said that they got in an accident, he blacked out, and then the kids were gone. Whereas we know, and this will be expanded upon later, he knows the kids died, he buried the kids, he is fully responsible for the kids dying. So that's what Susan referring to. She thinks that he is responsible because he drove drunk, and she is right. While they're talking about this, Susan reveals that Molly's Bond doll is in the testing room with them. Felix hid it there and told them not to tell Jack and Rose, and Susan is openly very uncomfortable around the doll. They leave, and then the doll moves towards the Buzu animatronic, and we see this facial recognition software that they had been using previously, and we see that at first it fails, but then it detects two faces, Ed and Molly. So we already kind of knew this from previous episodes, but Ed and Molly's spirit resides inside this Bond doll. After Ed and Molly are recognized by the Buzu animatronic, a distorted white face, that of the face we saw earlier just kind of popping up, approaches and then disappears into the Bond animatronic. This is going to be very important later. After this, we see Susan trying to work on the Bond animatronic, which, side note, it is so cool the way that Martin has animated Susan. She has that face that we're so used to seeing, the very kind of scary, uncanny valley edited photo face on top of this body, and it's like puppeted, and it's so cool to see the characters moving like this. It's just really exciting to me. The quality of animation is just incredible. He has improved so much, like, hats off. But anyway, as Susan is working on Bond kills her. And this is an event that we saw in the Walten Files too. But in that we saw it in kind of that video gamey, not really real representation. So we all knew this was coming, but to see it so violent and so real and in real time was just breathtaking. I mean, it's a horrifically gruesome scene, but it's beautiful. Like, it's so beautifully done. It's really upsetting, and the Bond movements are just terrifying. And the way that, I mean, I've already seen so many people talk about it, but after he finishes killing her and he's putting her, you know, together in the bandy suit, he just kind of goes back like this, like he's, oh, I'm so proud of my work, and it's so scary. It's so scary. So we'll get back to Bond and Susan later, but let's continue chronologically here. We see Jack Walten drive over to Felix's house, likely right after the phone call that we hear from the Walten Files 3, demanding to know what happened.
Felix, pick up the phone. Now, I need you to pick up the phone. It's been 3 hours since I told you to get Ed and Molly home. What happened to my children? If anything happened, Felix, you must tell me. You haven't told me in 3 hours. I need to know what's going on. I'm trying to call you all night. What the hell is wrong with you? I've been trying to contact you all night. I've been calling everyone for you. Just what the hell is wrong with you? 3 hours, you didn't call. I asked you to do one simple favor for me. I need to know, where are they? Where did you...
Because Felix was supposed to bring the kids home by like 9, and it's midnight at this point. Don't know what happened. He is obviously fearing the worst, and, you know, perhaps he is more aware of Felix's addiction than Susan and Charles were aware of. And I think that the phone call in the Walten Files 3 is a very impactful part of it. It's one of the most painful parts of the entire series. And seeing the moments after that of him driving to Felix's house just desperate for an answer as to what happened to his children, you can feel it. The voice acting all around here is phenomenal. There are no bad voice actors in this series. And just to see, again, seeing these characters, seeing Jack Walten literally driving, walking, knocking, it's just so cool. It's not something you always get in analog horror, and it's just really cool. Later that same morning, after Jack had driven to Felix's house, we cut to Felix near the location where the car accident happened. We see the aftermath of the car accident, Felix alive, covered in blood. And we see that he has dug 3 graves. He has buried Molly and Ed. The third grave is assumedly for him. He approaches the edge of a cliff and almost unalives himself, but then falls to his knees and does not. And this scene is very beautiful to look at. The combination of the real imagery and the, Martin style of character is really cool, and it's just very impactful. You can feel his pain, but you also still, you don't feel bad for him. You know he knows that he's up, but also he's more worried about himself than he is about what he's done to those kids. He throws away Molly's backpack into the water, but he keeps the doll, which we know he then ends up bringing back to Bob's Burgers. He brings the doll back home, and he's tortured by the presence of Ed and Molly. It's like eating him up. And I think this is a really interesting scene because it's evident that Felix is tortured by the situation, but not because he actually feels bad about what he did. He more just feels bad for himself. And I think that's a very realistic portrayal of, an actually bad person. It's not so black and white that, oh, he's evil, he killed the kids. Of course he didn't want to kill the kids, it was not his intention, but he is so narcissistic and, self-serving that all he cares about is him getting out unscathed. From a reputation standpoint, we see later chronologically, earlier in the series, that, Jack Walten is wiped from all the press and stuff about Bob's Burgers. It's just about how smart and great Felix is. So we know that his number one is him, and that's all he really cares about. So I think it makes Felix a very three-dimensional character, and it's honestly really interesting and fascinating to see. Going back to Bon and Susan, Bon is placing Susan's body into the Banny animatronic. Again, something we knew that happened because of the Walten Files 2. Molly and Ed can see what's happening to Susan via the doll, and they know that Susan has been taken into the same afterlife as them. We cut to that field we saw earlier, kind of liminal, weird, foggy field, and we see Molly and Ed. They're 2 red creatures, essentially, and they're talking to each other. Molly wants to help Susan. Ed doesn't want anything to do with it. I think he's just scared and wants, protect him, protect his sister, not get involved, because they're clearly very scared of Bon. Susan then appears in this afterlife area, disfigured at this point. Bon had broken her neck, so her head hangs at her side, and it's very frightening to look at. And she is asking what happened to her, where am I, what's going on, and a man's voice answers her, a very calm, collected, kind of eerie, but almost welcoming voice.
I hear you, Susan. I'm here.
Where are you? Please, where am I?
Don't you worry. You're in safe hands, Susan.
Who are you?
Oh, where are my manners? Pleasure to meet you. My name is Bon.
answers her, and the man, it is that white figure that we saw earlier, that we saw enter the Bond animatronic. He introduces himself as Bond. Behind Susan is the Bond's Burgers restaurant, and behind Bond is a different building. To me, it kind of looks like a church, but I don't know what that would mean yet. I just figured I'd point it out. He presents Susan with a bunny mask, a purple bunny mask, essentially telling her to accept the Banny animatronic as her new body because her spirit can't survive without a vessel. He says that the spirit lasts longer than the body, but it needs to attach to a new vessel or it will die. So then we cut to Susan inside the Banny animatronic, struggling to breathe, and tragically, we know from the Walten Files too that she starved to death inside of the animatronic. It's that scene where it repeatedly says the bunny is starving, the bunny is starving, the bunny is starving.
The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. The rabbit is starving. Is starving. Is starving. Is starving. Is starving. Is starving.
It's likely that she suffered alive in there, just paralyzed for several days after Bond broke her neck. That's essentially how it ends. There is an unlisted video that I can link below called Lacrimosa that just kind of expands upon what we already saw. I will go through it very quickly before I start getting into anything else. We see the police on site at the car crash, and the description to this video is actually like the police report, so I'll just go ahead and read that verbatim. Report 90892, May 4th, 1974. Brighton City Police Department. WRR Frank Davis, Felix Archer Crankin, reportedly arrived at the station in the morning. On May 3rd, he had a broken pair of glasses, dirty blue pants, and a yellow dress shirt covered in dirt and blood. When I got the call, he was already taken into custody. We sat him down for a few hours, and he revealed valuable information about a case we were previously told about earlier that same day by Mr. Jack Walton. Walton's two youngest kids, Ed and Molly Walton, had disappeared with Crankin the night prior. Felix's alibi stated he was unconscious for about 20 minutes. When he woke up, the kids had ran off. This was that, like what Susan was talking about earlier, where she didn't believe his statement. It's because she thinks that he drove drunk and killed the kids, and that is what happened. So it's not any deeper than that, thank God. But again, he's completely just trying to cover his ass. That's all he cares about. After that, we go back into the how the Cyberfun Tech console works, and it says that the consoles record audio, which I think is going to be important later, and the facial recognition is limited and can cause errors. And this is something I've seen people theorize, that the Bond animatronic's facial recognition fritzed in one of the older episodes, and when it killed Brian, the security guard, they thought that the Bond animatronic thought it was Sophie. We cut to Susan dying in the Banny animatronic, and we hear a phone call of Charles contacting the police about Susan's disappearance while Bond is putting her inside Banny. And again, hats off to the vocal performances in this. You can hear the pain and the sadness in Charles. He's clearly very worried about his friend. I really believe their friendship, throughout both of these videos. It's very evident. It's very natural. And this video, again, confirms that Susan is stuck alive inside Banny after Bond breaks her neck. And we see Susan's face over and enter the Banny animatronic, similar to how Bond entered the Bond animatronic. It's weird saying Bond. You know what I mean. Bond the entity versus Bond the bunny. That upside down head could be a signifier of a spirit inhabiting the animatronic. And then she has a chance to leave to Wonderland, which is the liminal afterlife I've been talking about. But Bond stands in her way at the very end, so I don't know if that means that he's not letting her spirit pass on, or that he's forcing her to go in there. But she does seem stuck inside Bond's burgers. So that's the end of Lacrimosa. That's the Walten Files 4. The reason that I loved this so much and that I thought it was so successful is I mean, aesthetically, it's just, he knocked it out of the park. The animation is vastly improved. It was never bad, don't get me wrong. I think that Martin's art style is one of the most exciting things about the Walten Files. But it just, you can tell that he took his time to hone his craft, and it's very evident. And I think one of the most interesting things about the aesthetic of the Walten Files 4 is there's a lot more use of like actual footage and images with the animation directly over top of it. And I think that this was really smart because there's always been the distorted faces that are like photographic. That's like a tenet of the Walten Files. And including the footage and the images and stuff like that, I think grounds that and makes it more harmonious with the very more, you know, cartoony animated style. So I love the combination of that. I think, you know, I think the Walten Files probably has the most unique visual style of any analog horror I've ever seen, just because, you know, that's going to inherently happen when something's mostly animated. I really just also appreciate the way that he's telling the story now. I think analog horror often suffers from a confusing timeline, and seeing some of these things laid out happening in real time really helps ground it, and it's easier to follow. I know that he had said this one was going to feel more cinematic, and it absolutely does feel more cinematic. I just, chef's kiss. Like, I can't stress enough that I think this is just incredible, incredible work. I really like that, and I already kind of said this, but that he went back and showed us scenes that we already know about, like Susan's death, but, you know, showing them real time as they're happening. I can compare it, I guess, to in the Mandela Catalog, in Mandela Catalog Volume 333, Thatcher enters the house and we see Adam's mom's body hanging very realistically, versus in Intruder Alert we see a graphic of her. And like, we knew that was going to happen, but seeing it happen before our eyes is very off-putting and kind of scary. So I like that. I hope that's a trend that maybe continues in analog horror, because I think sometimes, you know, people rely too hard on, it must be analog, it must fit into being a tape of a promotional thing or a police tape or whatever, when analog horror is just a name at this point. It's just a name for a genre. You don't have to follow it. It doesn't need to be realistic. Just to get into some things that I noticed and maybe verge onto the theory territory, although I don't want to be a Matt Pat up in this bitch because, hello, I'm not that. One thing that I'm just going to kind of chronologically go through things I thought. At the beginning, when you see Ed and Molly walking towards Felix, I love the vocal performance here and the way that they look, because you can tell that, like, they're uncomfortable. They are aware that something's wrong with Uncle Felix. They maybe don't like being around Uncle Felix, and it's almost like they know their fate before it happens. Not necessarily they're gonna die, but like something bad's gonna happen if they go with Uncle Felix. On a rewatch, you know, it's really devastating to see them walk into that adult section and then have it literally fade into Wonderland, because that's them just going towards their death. And a big thing that I want to address, Jack Walton is not Bon, or is at least not in control of Bon the bunny. I and many other people previously assumed that he was in control of the Bon animatronic simply due to process of elimination. Rosemary is in Shaw, Charles is in Buzu, and Susan is in Banny. That led many people, including myself, to believe Jack must be in Bon. Very William Afton core, especially earlier in the series, when I think a lot of people were really just thinking it was a FNAF ripoff. You know, that was the theory that I believed, but I always was kind of upset by, because the thought of Jack harming his friends and his wife was really upsetting. Like, you could argue, yes, he snapped because his kids died, but that's just not the type of man he seems to be to me. I don't get that from him. Like, I know obviously William Afton did the same thing, whatever, but I think he just had screws loose from the get, whereas I think Jack is a very gentle, kind man. And I don't think that he would snap in that way, especially because he still had Sophie. Sophie was still around. So I just don't see that happening. I think something has happened to Jack. I think he is missing. I know some people I've seen theorize that he is inside Bon, but he's not controlling Bon, because Bond, the entity, is in control, and Jack just kind of has to sit and watch everything happen. Which I get. I totally get that theory. That could be true. I personally like to believe he is fully separate from the Bond animatronic, and he is either dead, which I don't really think he's dead. I think he's out there somewhere, and ideally, endgame, I would love to see him and Sophie reunite to, like, take Bond down. You know, let me know what you think. Where the hell is Jack Walton? I'd love to find him. And at the end of Spectacle, his face does appear saying, I'm still here, but that could mean he's still here in that he is alive in the world, or that he is in the suit. So it really doesn't confirm nor deny either of those two, what I would say are the main theories of what happened to Jack. Let's get into Bond, because what the fuck? So I think the addition of Bond is the smartest thing, and again, Bond the entity. I think the addition of Bond into the Walten Files is the smartest decision that Martin has made, and I still don't even know what the fuck Bond is or why he is. But it has answered my biggest question and my biggest critique of the series, which was always, how did these spirits inhabit these animatronics? In FNAF, you have the puppet that is doing it, making it work, making it happen. And, you know, you could just say, oh, their spirits possess the animatronics, whatever. Sure, fine, but that's not, like, I wanted more, you know what I mean? Or I wanted them to at least just say that. So with Bond, he confirms that a spirit needs a vessel, so these spirits are attaching themselves to the animatronics so they can live on, but he is the one behind it. He is the mastermind behind it. I love him. He is so gross and terrifying to look at. One of the best villain designs I've ever seen in analog horror. One of the best entrances. His entrance in Wonderland when he approaches Susan and you realize how big he is. You can't see him because he's all white and he blends in with the background, but sometimes you'll see him hovering over Susan and see how long his limbs are. Terrifying. Terrifying. Voice performance is incredible. Such a calm, chilling, creepy voice, like, ooh. You know, just to kind of talk about what the Bond is. So, at one point, he tells Susan that he was scared too when he's telling her to accept the Banny body, which suggests that he met a similar fate. So, I wonder if he chose to inhabit Bond, though, rather than being forced, which is what I would assume with how he came in and just kind of booped himself in there. I don't have a good answer for what he is. He does appear chronologically before the car accident. You can actually see his face in one of Susan's training videos. He ducks down. I'll show it. I'll slow it. I had to slow zoom. I saw someone in a comment point it out. I will screenshot the comment because I would have never known if it wasn't for that person, so thank you. So there's a chance that he could have influenced Felix, but I don't love this theory because I think that Felix is solely responsible for his crimes. I don't think he should have an excuse. My personal theory about Bond is I think that he is some sort of spirit that feeds off of pain and suffering. Very similar to how I've talked previously about solar plexus clown gliders in one of my previous videos, and they feed off of negative energy. It's a being that feeds off of negative energy. So I kind of think that's where Bond's living. If I look at his face, he actually kind of looks like the solar plexus clown glider. Interesting. Anyway, so I think in some sort of spiritual, metaphysical way, he maybe knew that the people at BSI and Bond's Burgers were kind of doomed, so he latched on, and that, you know, the kid's death could be a good catalyst for everyone else going missing and him kind of farming this little community for himself, so maybe that he's not alone in Wonderland. It seems like he wants to have more people like him. He doesn't want to be alone. He maybe previously has been stuck alone. And I think that he thinks what he's doing is good, not necessarily like, oh, I must save you kind of good, but good for him. Like, he is doing it to fill his own personal needs, and he doesn't care if they get hurt in the process. And regardless of what Bond is, again, that's a very simple theory that I can't really back up. I think we just need more info on him to definitively say what he is. Regardless, I love him, and I love that he, you know, explains to a point how the spirits in the suit works, and I just think he is one of the most promising and interesting analog horror antagonists that we've seen. Sorry, Gabriel. I think you've just been overthrown. Oh. The thing that I kind of want to end with is really the thing that I love about this series the most is it's deeply sad. And that's something that I think Five Nights at Freddy's is too, and it gets kind of overshadowed a lot with all the lore explanation and crazy this and crazy that, and you know, Walten Files is kind of similar. It's easy to meme. There's lots of silly and cute things about it, but at its core, it's not just horror because, scary face. It's horror because it's tragic, and it's a very simple tragedy. People die in car accidents every day. You know, that's a very common way that people are killed, especially children. People being, you know, losing their families at a young age is tragic, and it's scary, and it could happen to any of us. And I think that's why it's so effective. And, you know, at its core, that's what the Walten Files is it's just a story of a family being ripped apart because of the selfish and careless decisions of one individual. And that's about as human and grounded as you can get. And while a lot of analog horrors are very grand with, you know, the whole world being taken over and crazy, bigger than anything, spiritual things or aliens or whatever, this is a very grounded, very pointed story, and I appreciate it for that. And I love all the crazy stuff. Again, I love the Mandela Catalog. I'm never gonna not love the Mandela Catalog. But, you know, the Walten Files is refreshing in its simplicity, and it's still complex. What the hell is going on with Bond? I don't know. I think that this story and the characters within it are some of the most compelling and real feeling characters we get in analog horror, and we have character-driven analog horror because of the Walten Files. You see it later in things like Mandela Catalog and Monument Mythos, and I don't think those would exist. I know Mandela Catalog wouldn't exist because Alex Kister has said so without the Walten Files, so I think it's just one of those things where, you know, we gotta recognize just the pillar that this is within this community, and that it's just getting better and better, and I cannot wait to see what Martin gives us next with the next 2 episodes and whatever will come after that. So I'm gonna keep following these, you know, as they come out. You know, if anyone comments anything interesting that I missed in this video, I would be happy to address it in the next video I make about Walten Files 5, and so on and so forth. You know, I love talking about analog horror. I have a few series that are smaller that I've been alerted to that I do want to deep dive on that I can hopefully make a video on. But this was something, I was on vacation after I made my Silent Hill video, and I just wanted to kind of get something out, and I loved this so much that I just kind of wanted to babble about it. Thank you for watching, and man, I can't wait to see what happens next. Bye.